Power on.
Earth, 2019. Dominant species, human. Galactic potential rating, 0. Cultural affiliation, combination of government and global businesses, corporatism, legacy institution. Species still conservative, superstitious, and religious. Ecologically illiterate, largely unaware of cosmological foundation of love. Level of technological dependence is disturbingly higher than the galactic standard. Species distracted and behavior controlled by technology companies. System error. Advanced concepts detected beyond normal human levels. New galactic potential rating, over 9,000. Transmission type, podcast. Host, the Man of Tomorrow. Brian Sovryn. Source, Sovryn Tech.
The Man of Tomorrow is here for you, baby. The Golden Stallion, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, ready for some more Sovryn Tech. A little bit of a double load that you're getting this weekend. Just making up for an episode I wasn't able to get out on time last week, but who cares? You're getting the episodes. So you never lose out. I mean, we do quality here, but you always get your quantity, baby, sooner or later. But regardless, we have a lot to get into in this episode. Actually, some very large subjects, one of which I probably won't even be able to get into with this. So who the hell knows? This week might turn into a triple load of Sovryn Tech. It's been a long, long time since we've had that. But the subject I'm referencing is talking about Twitter in general. I really think that there's a big conversation to have around that. Of course, I am on Twitter, and if you want to follow me there, you just go to @SovrynTech, SOVRYN Tech, and I share stuff there all the time, including giving you updates on releases of episodes, just in case you're not following along on Podbean, or you're not a member of the Zomia 1 Underground, which why the hell are you not? Sign up for that at Zomia1.com, of course, and you get access to thousands of hours of exclusive content available nowhere else. Well, kinda, but nowhere else, only to Zomia 1 Underground members. And it's not just Sovryn Tech stuff. Oh, it could be everything else that's on Zomia 1. Hard and Fast Podcast, TIE Fighter Renegades, Sovryn Trek, all the shows on Zomia 1. There's content that relates to all of it that comes out. Well, you never know. It comes out, but it comes out often. There's at least new content, at least once a week, if not more. So anyway, we do have some big subjects still. Even if we don't get into the Twitter one this week, we do have some big subjects still to get into this week that when I first read it to you, you're probably not going to think it has anything to do with tech. But actually, as this show has really illustrated for over 7 years, it has everything to do with tech. Or at the very least, it's a catalyst. Tech is certainly a catalyst in all of this. So we're going to get to that. We have a very, very interesting HackSec to get into if we get there. And for the Climax, we didn't get a Climax in on the last episode, but I told you what it would be about in this episode. And it's going to be, we're going to have a little bit more of a conversation around the Matrix because, of course, the news came out that the Matrix 4 is going to be, is getting produced. Looks like now, as I had said, as I guessed, that it's going to start in early 2020. They are not wasting time on getting this movie done and out there. Of course, Keanu Reeves, I think, just celebrated his 55th birthday. So, you don't want to take too long in production here. I mean, not that that's that old, but, well, anyway, we'll talk about that during the Climax. But, before we get into anything else, we got a couple stories in the Foreplay, including a great one sent by a great Sovryn Tech, longtime Sovryn Tech listener that I want to talk about, all of which plays off very nicely from, unfortunately, I guess, but from conversations we were having in episode 340 of Sovryn Tech, which is the previous episode to this one. So it does well that these are getting released back to back. But before we talk about that, the good times you can have in this life, why not make them better? And you know what I'm talking about with good times in this life. The one good time that you're kind of guaranteed in this world is fucking. Woo! You know it, baby. And if you want to get your fuck on like no other, I want you to check out Blue Chew. Blue because it's the blue pill. Chew because it's chewable. Blue Chew. You go to bluechew.com, BLUE chew.com. And this isn't just if, I don't know, you're getting up there like Keanu or something and, maybe you look down and Rodimus Prime isn't getting as hard as he used to, as quickly as he used to. It can help with that because it has the same active ingredients as Cialis and Viagra. Oh no, maybe you want to go all night long like, Grimlock with the Dinobots, baby. Transformers fucking. That's what I used to think dubstep sounded like. But if you just want to improve your performance and go all night long, you know what I'm talking about, okay? You want to try Blue Chew. Now, here's the deal, and it's a great deal. First off, you don't have to go to the doctor, okay? All of this gets handled online. No, it can all be very discreet. Gets shipped to you very discreet, the whole thing. But here's the deal. If when you go to bluechew.com, BLUE chew.com, and I want you to do this, they're supporting Sovryn Tech, you support them. If you go there, use the code TECH, TECH, when you check out. This is very important. Use the code TECH, and you'll get your first order for free. You're just going to spend $5 for shipping. Can you beat that deal? I couldn't beat that deal. Woo. And so I jumped on it. But you want to get your hands on this if you want to turn the bedroom into the most exciting place on planet Earth, baby. And, well, don't take my word for it. Just go to bluechew.com, make it happen. Use that code TECH, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. All right, let's get into our opening salvo of stories here. Well, there's a bit of an irony in using the word salvo, but we'll save that for the second story in this, and you'll get what I mean when we get to it. But opening this up, this actually comes from a Sovryn Tech listener, was shared on Twitter, of all things, which is a great place to share content with me, or use the email address, bbs@sovryntech.com. Got some other great emails from people, things they want me to check out and look at and maybe talk about. I will be doing so. But anyway, I'll read a little bit here because it's from Boing Boing, so it's very brief. So, not even barely a couple paragraphs. So I'm going to read it fast and we can talk about it. But the headline was, Guy returns his smart light bulbs, discovers he can still control them after someone else buys them. Woo. Here we go. Here's the story. You know what's great about putting Wi-Fi enabled Turing-complete computers into things like light bulbs? Not a single fucking thing. Woo, I'll second that one, baby. Yeah. Here goes. In the latest installment in the Internet of Shit edition of the unanticipated but totally predictable consequences, America blog editor John Erevosis discovered that the Philips Hue light bulbs he returned to Amazon were now in someone else's house, but still under his control. He discovered this because the new owner, Amanda Jean, initialized, that's the name. How does he know the name? Well, here we go. Initialized the bulbs, and then his Hue app started to send him a stream of updates from Amanda Jean's house, along with the address for her IoT hub and her email address. He writes, quote, because I'm a nice guy, I deleted my account, which I'm hoping didn't just delete her account, end quote. Fucking A. We were talking about, what was it, neurobehavioral predictive network or whatever, networks. We were talking about that in episode 340 of Sovryn Tech. I mean, you don't even need the government to go spying around at houses. You could just, in fact, I mean, this is a very interesting bit of, dare I say, hacking, right? Or surveillance. Buy, some light bulbs, right? Buy some IoT bullshit and then return it to Amazon. Or maybe buy it first, program it to where you can keep an eye on it and then give it away as a Christmas gift or something like that. And you can spy on whoever the fuck you want to spy on. And I know there's some goddamn freaks out there, and I don't mean that in the good way, that would absolutely engage in this kind of action. I mean, this is going to turn into some kind of prank, I'm sure at some point. I don't know if Philips has done anything about this. The Philips Hue bulbs are kind of the bit of the gold standard as far as smart light bulbs go. I mean, again, but the whole point here, I mean, they already summed up exactly what I would say about it. What's great about putting Wi-Fi enabled Turing complete computers into things like light bulbs? Not a single fucking thing. And bingo. Internet of Targets, baby. That's what IoT should stand for. Again, what does the S stand for in IoT? Wait, there is no S, and the S stands for security. Oh shit. Bad stuff. Don't buy into the, and I know, and I'll say it again, because when IoT first started becoming a thing, I said, don't do it. Send out the market signals. We are not interested in this. And you know what happened? I think the market kind of spoke, because nobody, I know very few people, and I've looked around, and we don't get exact sales numbers on these things, but just kind of anecdotally, I don't know a whole lot of people that want this shit. Okay? So if the market operated on some kind of like actual, like a groundswell demand, I don't think there's a groundswell demand for IoT. But here's the rub, is that the tech giants, okay, or the Sinisters, whoever, or whatever, all these different companies, they don't care what the market says, because this is such a key point for you to understand. Okay. And it took me a while to answer the question, why can't I buy a dumb television? And when I say dumb, I mean one that doesn't have a Roku built into it, that doesn't have all this other bullshit built into it. Okay. Or even, you could buy a Samsung TV. Now, granted, Samsung bought out one of the original IoT bridge companies, like hub companies, that was Smart Things, and they baked Smart Things into televisions. Why? Because they knew that'd be a way, they weren't going to be able to, they couldn't sell the average dumbass, okay? They couldn't sell them on buying an IoT hub. They're not going to understand what that is, but they know they're going to need a TV, right? And so they'll buy the TV, and then the TV will tell them, hey, we can manage your light bulbs, we can manage your toaster, we can manage your microwave, we can manage your children, we can, that was bad. We can manage whatever in your house, and then dumbass A and dumbass B will understand what's going on, and they'll set it up. Otherwise, no one was going to buy a separate hub device. That really wasn't going to happen. I remember in the 90s, it wasn't IoT, but basically, you had these people who bought, you should have seen. In fact, I'll give you permission. Go to Google Images, okay? Because I want you to get only the best results. And I want you to just type in 90s universal remotes. You are going to see remotes the size of small yachts that people put on. This is why people had coffee tables, you understand? But you basically had to be like a member of Mensa to be able to figure out these fucking remote controls. Okay. They were so bad, but people were obsessed with these things. But you could not be, you couldn't be a moron and use one of these things. All right. So that's my point, is that you're not going to get, the dumb shits buying, or should I say the copper tops? How about that one? Woo! You're not going to get the copper tops buying, a Smart Things hub. So you got to put it into the TV. So you have that incentive of why there are smart TVs. Then there's the advertising angle of all this. Okay. So there's the data collection that comes from, IoT, and really the data collection that comes from all the different, say having a Roku in there, whatever else. But then you have, on Samsung TVs now, when you turn down the volume, you have the on-screen volume indicator that comes up. An ad pops up on top of the fucking volume control. Didn't you spend enough on this, 8K TV, in high def, you can taste the fucking brain matter off of it? Do you need ads on that shit? Oh, they don't care. They don't care. So my point in saying this is that these companies don't give a shit about what you actually want, and they are to the point, all this stuff is so, just entrenched in modern civilization that they basically, everybody wants, or not everybody, but, most people, I get it. They want a TV for whatever fucking reason. Okay. Well, they're going to get one, but they're going to get the one that Samsung wants you to have, not the one that you want. Because again, good luck trying to find a dumb television. The best thing you can do, is I've said for years on the show, again, that's how long this has been going on, is to, buy a computer monitor. that hopefully doesn't have ads built into it. So don't give me this horse shit about the market speaking, okay? Because the market, as in the people that buy a lot of these products, are dumb. They're just dumb. And they're not going to make the right fucking choice. You know, I mean, it's just a matter of time, frankly. I mean, we have these Philips Hue balls, yeah. Balls, hot as balls. That's how it feels when I start talking about this shit. But, eventually, probably every light bulb is going to be like this. Just like now, every TV is basically a smart TV. I mean, I'm sure there's some outliers out there, okay? But effectively, you're going to end up where all light bulbs are like this. You're going to be logging into your light bulbs. What I would give to have a time machine to go back in time a good 30 to, 20, 30 years. Let's make it 30. And I want to walk up to somebody. I want to walk up to a computer fucking scientist, a programmer. I want to say, in the future, you're going to log into your light bulb. And he's going to look at me like I just told him some Philip K. Dick dystopian future. And in fact, I don't know, I could probably start a revolution back then because they'd be so terrified of that concept. But I don't know, something fucking happened somewhere where people now think that this is a good idea. I mean, how nice of John Aravosis to delete his account. Of course, it might have deleted Amanda Jean's account as well with these light bulbs. But if these are the brilliant people, like, again, what are you doing? Don't buy into this. If there's still market categories where we don't have to buy into IoT, don't do it. I'm not necessarily saying that. I mean, I don't have a whole ton of faith that the market is going to be able to tell Philips or Samsung or whoever, Sylvania, I don't give a shit, whoever makes the light bulbs, is going to be able to tell them, don't put fucking chips in my light bulbs. I have and look, if you have that confidence, please, I want you to write me the email. I'll read it. Prove me wrong. Tell me that the market's going to solve this. Tell me that. I don't know if the market can help people's desire, or it can do anything about people's desire for convenience. They want convenience over ethics. Does the market solve stupidity? I don't know. I don't know that that's true. I need you to tell me that. I'm not against free markets. I'm all for it. Okay. Don't confuse me here. But this patent answer of the market will solve things. The body count is stacking high. Okay. As far as, in the market of where I don't see the market solving things, or at least handling things in an ethical fashion. I just don't see it. Or that it actually gives people what they want. Well, anyway, send your complaints, bbs@sovereigntech.com. Believe me, I would love to hear responses to this. Okay. I'd love to hear that great argument for IoT from somebody. Okay. Especially somebody who's into, free market philosophy, which right on, I know a lot of you are who listen to me and, and I love you. Write to me and explain it to me how IoT, what I'm asking. Anyway, let us carry on. Let's move before we spend too much time talking about this. Let's move on to another story. And this was something very interesting that the DOJ, Department of Justice, they filed a request, for a warrant effectively to Apple and Android to hand over the names of over 10,000 app users. Let's understand this. Nothing like this has ever been done before. You might be thinking, wait, well, this hasn't happened before. There have been plenty of times, I'm sure, where individuals who, say, downloaded a certain app, that they maybe have requested information on a certain individual. Now, this immediately brings up the danger that I have talked about for a long time of having, where the software that you download comes from a central repository that has a governing body at the top. Okay. For example, and of course we're talking about the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store. Okay. How things used to be, and still kind of are. Thankfully, the Windows Store or the Microsoft Store seems to have failed. But how things used to be, like say with the Windows computer that you had, few years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, is you would go to, say, what I'm recording this on right now, Audacity. You would go to Audacity's website, and from the website, you would download it. That's it. Simple. You don't have to log in to download the software. You don't have to do jack shit. You just download an exe file, and you install it, and away you go. Audacity has no goddamn clue who I am. More or less. As it should be with software. With apps on smartphones that come from the Play Store or the App Store, wholly different story. You are logged in as a person, or generally you're not going to install apps unless you're using some kind of alternative solution like F-Droid, etc., which I am fully supportive of. Okay, but you get my point. So because of that, your identity can be tied to, and maybe you want to put it, maybe you're putting in a bullshit identity. Okay, fine. But if they're already tracking you by app, they are still going to track your phone because you have Google Play services on there, which, as we have said for years on this show, is effectively a rootkit. So DOJ, in light of recent, and I should have been a little more sensitive with my body count analogy, but regardless, or metaphor, regardless, 10,000 app users who downloaded, and this is from September 5th, 2019, when they filed this order. It's an app called Obsidian 4. It's in the App Store and in the Google Play Store. And it's an app used to control rifle scopes. And it's made by a company, I guess they make a lot of night vision scopes, or night vision, whatever, binoculars, all kinds of things. American Technologies Network Corp. And so anybody, here's what you got to understand. This is where it's unprecedented. This wasn't targeting somebody specific. It was targeting a specific app. And anybody that downloaded this app at any time, and that's at least over 10,000 people, they requested from Apple and Google the names of the people who downloaded that app. Okay, so say, I don't know, just picture any scenario. Some of them, I'm sure, could be very benign. Okay, where you downloaded an app or something, and somehow that app, well, here, let's give an example, say in Russia, say, homosexuality becomes an illegal thing, and you downloaded Grindr. And, you went through via the App Store or whatever the Russian equivalents of all these things are. Okay, this is just an example, okay? One day, suddenly homosexuality becomes illegal. Everybody that downloaded Grindr just got added to a list. All because of your identity being attached to installing software. Something that simple. And this is exactly an argument that I have made for many years. This is why I started the whole Dark Android project and said, okay, we're going to install. What we need to do, we need to start pushing. And I know actually, and kudos, Satan bless some of you Sovereign Tech listeners, because I know what you did. Some of you, and you emailed me about it. You actually emailed the developers of apps and said, hey, could you just send me the APK of your app? I don't want to get it through the Google Play Store. And fuck right, because what I was saying was at that time, and to this day, I would still argue for it ultimately, even if I, do make concessions here and there at times of, getting everybody on board with some level of security, is that we got to get back to the place where that's what we're doing. We're not relying upon central app repositories. We can get it independently. I mean, there's a security trade-off with that, but then we need to become knowledgeable about, cybersecurity in general. Okay. That's a whole other conversation. But regardless, here's a clear-cut reason of why that still needs to be a thing, and the importance of using something like, say, F-Droid, or having more decentralized app repositories, or again, just leaving it to the developers. Now, you could say to me, well, couldn't the DOJ just request from an app developer, like an Android app developer, and request, okay, who downloaded your app or whatever? No, because if they're just putting out the APK for you to use and install, and you can, with Android, with iOS, it's not exactly possible with iOS, okay? But with Android, you can do this, where you can set allowed to install third-party software or third-party apps. That's how Amazon gets their app store onto your Android phone and so on. Okay. You can set that up, And look, they don't know who downloaded the APK. They don't give a rat's shit. In fact, they probably had it stored on AWS and would just like schlep out a link and, thousands of people or millions of people could just download from AWS, whatever. And yeah, AWS might have some kind of tracking of IP addresses and blah, blah, blah. Sure. But at the very least, it wasn't directly tied to your identity. This is ugly. This is really, really ugly. And do you know, again, this is about rifle scopes. This is about guns. This is obviously in reaction, much like we were talking about with that neurobehavioral prediction network that is being proposed at the very least, which that should be scary enough that there are people who think that that's a good idea, even though we talked about why it's not at all, okay, even from medical professionals that it's not a good idea. You know that these app users of Obsidian 4, they just ended up, I mean, I could sound like Chris Jericho right now. You just made the list, right? You're probably getting put on a list of unhinged people. And all you fucking did was download an app that probably helped you out on range shooting day. But now you're a suspected terrorist. How you feeling about that smartphone right now? You feeling all right? You doing good there? You still using it? Well, at least use it until you finish listening to this episode, because we got more to get into. But anyway, that's our foreplay, just opening that stuff up. Of course, if you want to talk about these kinds of stories, I have a recommendation. Why don't you go to Sovereign Tech sponsor Free Talk Live? Go to freetalklive.com. That's the website for it. And this is a radio show. Yes, it's a radio show, but you can download it as a podcast too. But it is a radio show. It's not just any radio show. It is the number 27 talk show in the United States, the only libertarian show on the radio. And it goes 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night. Baby, I mean, to go that hard, that long, you'd have to be taking Blue Chew for that. But this isn't a Blue Chew ad. This is for Free Talk Live. Go to freetalklive.com. It's an open phones call-in show. So if you want to talk about this stuff, if you want to get the word out even more to all the listeners, say, of Free Talk Live, why don't you call into the show and say, hey, I heard the Golden Stallion. And they're going to know who you're talking about. They know me. Obviously, they're sponsoring the show. I also worked for the show for 2 years. But anyway, I mean, just call in and say, the Golden Stallion was talking about this. I think this is fucking terrifying. And you're damn skippy it is. You are being tracked, whether it's the light bulb that you thought you just bought. And I mean, speaking of that light bulb thing, that person bought it, returned it to Amazon and then bought it off of Amazon. Now, Amazon's supposed to go through some kind of inspection service. Like, you even get the stickers. I see them when I buy from Amazon. If it's like a refurb or something like that, where there'll be an inspection sticker that says, Amazon certified that it's been, that it works and blah, blah, blah. Well, I guess they don't bother to clear this shit out. Or however it's not just a flub. I mean, but we'll call it a flub that happened with those Philips Hue light bulbs. Where the identity the login information basically stayed, or the app information stayed connected. Fucking unbelievable. And well, then look what else happens when, just imagine that. Every app you install could potentially put you on a list at some point. Now, I mean, is the U.S. government going to end up, making a list out of everybody that plays Candy Crush? Probably not, but you get where this could go. And where things that seem perfectly benign and wonderful and give you a good time could end up and will be used against you. So if you want to talk about that, of course, go to Sovereign Tech sponsor, once again, Free Talk Live, and that is freetalklive.com, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovereign Tech. Now, I have a story. Originally, I was going to... Again, I want to talk about this. I will get to it and talk about the Twitter trending box, because I've had a bit of a revelation during my time there. I'm quoting with that. But I read this story. It actually, I'll say how I found it. It was actually on Twitter, of all ironies, and a guy that I'm a bit of a fan of. I imagine there's things we don't necessarily see eye to eye on, but I'm a bit of a fan. That being Robert Meyer Burnett, who, understand, is a very, very lefty. He's very much a lefty. Okay, I mean, he is there. Okay, so keep that in mind. He shared this article from the New York Post, and his comment in his tweet was, "Hits too close to home." So I'm guessing he could in some ways relate to this, which I think is interesting. I mean, Robert Meyer Burnett, I don't know how old he is. He's older than me. Got plenty of gray hair these days. he was one of the two guys, him and Mark Altman, were the guys behind what I consider one of the greatest movies ever made, that being Free Enterprise. He made that film, okay, which is not about like the free market or anything. It's it's about Star Trek fans. But anyway, I love the guy. I think he's dynamite. He is a nerd in my class, or more accurately, I'm a nerd in his class. I like to think. We're huge fans of Logan's Run. Go down the fucking list. Actually, anybody that watches that movie, I think, becomes a fan. But regardless, he shared this. So have that context of where I experienced this. And again, when I start reading it, you might not think this has anything to do with tech, but it does. But I don't mind, even if it didn't, because I think it speaks to a much broader issue. And one that I am willing to explore, which has to do with something we've been talking about for the past couple of years, right? The attention wars, how tech companies, how everybody, not just tech companies, they might be using tech for it, but how everybody's just dying for your attention. Every company, blah, blah, blah. But here's the headline for this story. Americans have become children, demanding, dependent, and needy. Let's read this. It's from September 5th, 2019. Very fresh. As a population, it's exotic to the point of extinction, vanishing in plain sight. The American adult, so that's the population they're saying is going extinct. Reading on. As a trend, this has been gestating for at least the past decade, from Judd Apatow's glorified man babies to Lena Dunham's ostensibly grown girls to the acceptance of adulting, the word adulting, quote unquote, adulting, into the lexicon. Boy, I fucking hate that word, but continuing. But it truly, alarmingly, calcified this summer. Take primetime TV. This summer was awash in game shows. Major stars, including Justin Timberlake, Jimmy Kimmel, Rob Lowe, Ellen DeGeneres, Alec Baldwin, Tiffany Haddish, Elizabeth Banks, The Rock, Melissa McCarthy, and Jamie Foxx, producing and or emceeing all of those game shows and whatever. Quote, what it comes down to is that the movie business has changed, end quote, Baldwin, that being Alec Baldwin, told Vulture in June. Quote, they're going to put up a lot of money, including big fees for Iron Man and those kind of tentpole films. But everything else, the fees in the movie business have collapsed, end quote. To Baldwin's point, just look at the 5 top grossing films this summer. The Lion King, Toy Story 4, Spider-Man Far From Home, Aladdin, and John Wick 3. The biggest album release of the summer, if not the year, came awash in pastel colors, animation, dollhouses, and heart-shaped glitter bombs. The ostensibly adult-themed Lover by Taylor Swift, age 29. A recent front-page story in the Wall Street Journal reported... Well, okay, I want to stop on this for a second. This part here is a little incongruous in what exactly they're trying to say. Like, I don't exactly get their point. I think what they're trying to say is that people are just like falling for game shows and the summer didn't have a lot of highbrow content. And that the big movies that, these great, quote unquote, great actors, okay, which that's debatable for some, but that these quote unquote great actors, they have to be in what are seen as immature franchise films. Take Spider-Man, Lion King being basically a kid's movie, Toy Story 4, and so on. Of course, we well know that a lot of, this is why I don't exactly get their point on this, but I don't think it exactly matters, okay? I don't know if they're making, understand, like if it wasn't Robert Meyer Burnett sharing this, I would have thought that this would have just been some conservative asshat who's saying like, oh, never date anybody that watches comic book movies, which is, comic book movies generally suck today. But come on, give me a fucking break. Let people like what they like. Regardless, I'm guessing that's kind of the point that they're making here. And Alec Baldwin's point that like with movies, like if you want to make $1 million in movies, you've got to be in these what are apparently childish films, whatever. But the point I was going to make, we know that like Toy Story 4 has it's media made with a multitude of demographics in mind. There's stuff for the adult to get, there's stuff for the kid to get, and so on. It works on different levels. The game show thing is kind of preposterous, but I guess they're saying that there wasn't a lot of highbrow stuff, like NBC and ABC aren't putting out Masterpiece Theater anymore. Now they're just doing these, crazy-ass game shows. Maybe there's a point there. But this is all pointing at signs that the adult who should be into mature, highbrow material or whatever, maybe they'd want to watch Mary Ka with, who the fuck was that the guy who was in Spencer for Hire, Robert Ulrich? Did I got that right? God damn, I love that show. Anyway, we'll just keep reading on with this, because here's another point, and this is where it gets more, I think, to what they're trying to say. A recent front-page story in the Wall Street Journal reported on recess for grown-ups, a new industry in which otherwise high-functioning adults pay good money to play dodgeball, kickball, hopscotch, and gorge on grilled cheese and chicken nuggets. Quieter play with Lincoln Logs, Play-Doh, or Silly Putty is also encouraged. So what they're bringing up here is that, well, at like these companies, and I'm sure Google's probably doing this with a bunch of others, where they have nap time and everything, which, hey, middle of the day naps are a great and goddamn wonderful thing and are very central to your health. I'm not going to argue against that. But basically the gist that they're making here is that, now we have adults who are, going back to kindergarten days and playing hopscotch in the middle of the workday. Okay. Do I have any problem with that? Not really. Okay. I mean, I really don't. I could appreciate a good game of dodgeball, quite frankly. I don't need David Hasselhoff behind me whipping me over it, but, well, those that have actually watched movies know what I'm talking about there. Reading on. And for those who prefer more traditional summer escapes, taking, say, a cruise, Carnival Cruises, headquartered in Florida, announced the first cruise ship to have a roller coaster on deck. And for any guest averse to riding 187 feet above sea level at 40 miles per hour, they can play Family Feud live on a recreated set. It all comes full circle. But when it's no longer enough entertainment to be headed for foreign locales, distracted by casinos and discos or restaurants, or say just the majesty of the open sea, we have hit a cultural and societal nadir. There are multiple factors contributing to the death of adulthood, including the last recession, which has retarded and that's the exact word, which has retarded the economic and social progress of millennials. Oh, here we go. We're blaming millennials. As a cohort, they are living with their parents longer, carrying more debt than the previous generation, and delaying marriage and home buying. Behind them is Generation Z, which, according to the American Psychological Association, reports the highest levels of stress than any other generation. Gee, I wonder why the fuck that is. We'll talk about that in a second. Gen Z's salve and stressor, social media, which they say can be a support, 55%, or an anxiety-inducing black hole at 45%. This, it seems, is ground zero for this phenomenon. The phenomenon being the end of the American adult. Technology. See, I told you had to do with it. Email pings and text alerts and likes are turning us into little more than Pavlovian reactors. A study out of London this week finds the average person frustrated if it takes more than 16 seconds to load a web page or 25 seconds for a traffic light to change. Woo! Now, we talked about this with the 5G thing? Like, what the fuck is with people? Like, really, you can't wait for a goddamn web page to load? I remember, I don't mean to sound like an old man, but I guess, fuck it, 38 now, maybe I am, because well, I don't know. According to this article, at 38, I should be like 12. Anyway. We'll comment on all this. But I remember that going to a website, I could go grab some tea while waiting for that website to load. And you know what? I did. And that was fine. Because when I went to a website, I wasn't going there to get some kind of fix. Quick fix of any kind. I was going to engage in some intellectual pursuits. Those take time, in case you forgot. But regardless, let's keep reading. We are losing, this is the last paragraph. We are losing crucial emotional and mental capacities for self-reflection, for wandering thought, for the ability to tolerate boredom. And that is the very definition of being a child. All id. Out of control, demanding and needy and dependent. It's poisoned our politics and our personhood. The terrible irony is this: only we can fix it. Now, I read this. I am very much of two minds on this whole shtick, okay, on this whole thing. First off, There's some truth to what's going on here. This was a very, very popular story. And during HackSec, we might get to another very, very popular story. It's very scant on details. It mentions a couple of, studies or some research done, some statistics, but there's not a whole lot here. It is very short. You saw how quickly that I was able to read it. Now, if the one study is true about Gen Z, that they are like the most stressed out generation in history, I can totally believe that. Why? Because we know that when you exist in even just the threat of a surveillance society, not just a surveillance state, but a surveillance society, that it causes you to be significantly more stressed. Because, again, the inherent desire and nature of a human being is to have privacy. And when you don't have it, you are existing outside of a healthy condition of you as a human being. You become stressed. There's just one thing that happens because of that. So that part doesn't surprise me at all, that that's happening. And the run, it reminds me very much of like something like Ayn Rand would say, right? Where Ayn Rand in Atlas Shrugged, where as civilization was falling apart more and more in Atlas Shrugged, people ran to the movie theater. Right? Because they just needed the escapism to get away. And maybe a lot of adults or older people, because this is saying that the American adult is basically gone. Okay. Maybe a lot of adults are running to stuff that they were into as children because they want to remember what it was like perhaps before everything they did was being watched and everything relied upon a like and all this crap. I mean, I don't know. You have so many people that go to like the movies. I mean, I go to the movies, time here and there. And I mean, you see so many people on their phones in the middle of the movie. I have to wonder how many of these people actually watch these movies, but that's in many ways neither here nor there. Part of the problem with this article is there's no definition of what exactly is the American adult. Like, what are they supposed to do? And I want to bring this up because I think any concept we had, like especially conservative concepts of what being an adult or being a grown-up means, were never true. Like in the 50s and 60s, monogamy was not order of the day. You had all these guys who had mistresses right and fucking left. I mean, all these concepts that I hear of what, like, a grown man is supposed to be like, I don't think that ever really, I don't know that ever really existed. And if it did exist, it's only in the minds of adults now who think they saw it as children, but really they just didn't get to see everything that their adults or, that their parents were doing. And believe me, I mean, the anecdotes alone that I could bring up about this, where you think that, your parents were just these shining examples of hardworking individuals, whatever, they were probably having who knows what affairs at work and whatever other kind of horseshit was going on. I mean, I could tell stories of my own family from like my grandparents that were just, that were crazy. I mean, crazy stories that you think would be outlandish today, but they were doing it in the 30s. So problem one is that this concept of the American adult, I don't think has any actual definition. It never really existed. There's like this marketing scheme. It's just like the marketing scheme. Like one of the problems I have with this article is where it's mentioning that, like they're not owning a home or getting married until later on. Owning a home, this idea of, a man's home is his castle, or that the American dream is like owning a home. Those are literally marketing slogans that were created about 100 years ago. They are marketing slogans. They are not the reality. They are not the reality of what human beings normally do. Go to Europe. In Europe, owning a home wasn't a concept until fucking the Iron Lady came in the 80s. Everybody rented. And they just accepted that as like that's fucking life. And what are you going to say? European people were backwater or something? Oh, give me a break. The idea of owning your own home, again, that is pure marketing hype. That's all that is. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with owning a home. Good for you if you do that. That's fucking dynamite, okay? I'm not taking anything away from you, but let's be clear here that somehow that's part of being an American adult is nonsense. That, again, those are marketing slogans. The idea of getting married, so what? Maybe the most immature thing that anybody could do is try to define love for you and what you consider to be love. Talk about being fucking immature. What does that have to do with adult? So this whatever, they never really define it. I guess they just kind of expect you to know. But the reason that everybody knows what an American adult is not because we all experience them. It's because that's what marketing told us an American adult is. That's what the ads told us. That's what the TV shows told us. That's what, I don't know, Cheers or whatever the fuck told us was an American adult. So that part is horseshit. However, I think there is some truth to the acceptance of a banality of existence and this will be ironic because we're going to talk about the Matrix later, but an acceptance of a life that, whether it's physical or on the internet, is inherently virtual. Meaning that you're not actually living the life that, say, you could live, or you're not living life to a full potential, but you are living life playing these games that they, them, those, whoever's in power, whatever authoritarianism body, be it company, corporation, government, whatever, tells you need to be playing. And because of that, the idea of people who have confidence in their ability and who accept responsibility and are responsible individuals, you don't have to use the word adult, they are going the way of the dodo. People that have like a concept of how the world works, because I think you should have that. If an American adult is defined perhaps by, maybe having children or things like this. I'm not saying it needs to be. I'm just saying maybe it does. Generally, that child should look to, mommy or daddy and expect them to have an understanding of how things work, because, that mommy and daddy should, in whatever context, really be a steward of that child. I was walking down the street. True story. I was walking down the street the other day, and I saw two people pretty clearly older than me. Again, I'm 38. I saw two people going around, and and look, folks, I love video games. I do an entire gaming podcast. I'm a huge fan of video games. But I saw two people walking around, and like they would keep turning and just like going over to the left. Doing all this weird shit. And I'm looking like, what the fuck are these people doing? And then it finally kind of clicked what was happening, because they would just be staring at their smartphones, and then they'd be like point over here and they'd be talking to each other. They were playing Pokemon Go or something along those lines. And I looked at this and they just looked, I'm just going to look, fuck. I run into these issues. Okay. Where I get it. Okay. There are probably people listening to my voice right now who play Pokemon Go. I have talked about the concerns, the problems around that. Around like Niantic's, a lot of Niantic's games, right? Like what was the other one? Ingress. That was really just a way of improving Google Maps. They were just gamifying the matter, and you didn't get paid for that job. And so I'll just say it. These people, and I know I've been saying moron and idiot, and dumbasses a lot in this episode, but it's just what I'm feeling right now. Okay. They look like dumbasses. They look like morons running around. It's like cats chasing their own tails. It was the weirdest fucking thing. Now, if they're having fun, hey, I guess I should be happy, that they're having fun or whatever. But clearly these are people who have no concept of what those games are actually about. And they are being, they're not playing a game. They're being played. Yes, I do a gaming podcast, but I make it very clear on there. I am old school, baby. You know what I play the most? I play a fucking PS2 that doesn't connect to the internet for fucking shit. And I know people said about this too, like that, the average gamer is like around 40. And so, people aren't adults anymore. No. Video games are art, or at least those kind of video games are. There's games like Pokemon Go, Diablo 3 and others. That's not art. Those are fucking Skinner boxes. Or worse. This concept, and this is the real concern here, okay? Because it doesn't really matter what the definition of the American adult is. Okay. But this idea that we have a permanently infantilized, can I use that term? A permanently immature, a population that walks around acting like they're still in high school and all this, a population that thinks adulting, using that word, is funny and not tragically ironic. That is a genuine problem that we have today. And my concern is that it is that still that high school mentality, that social media is pushing you to get that engagement. Technology has created an infinite, universal popularity contest. And everybody's buying into that. And the person that just stands on their own and does their own shit is gone. Okay? This article was trying to get at something that seemed a little off, but it didn't. It got confused in itself, and it fucked some shit up. Okay? There's nothing wrong with you enjoying a Superman movie. There's nothing wrong with you reading comic books to this day. Art is art. Art is the basis of human existence, and its enjoyment is one of the most mature and healthy expressions of the human condition that you could possibly engage in. However, not all things that get generally classified and categorized under art are art. For example, Pokemon Go, go down the fucking list. But people that step out of the expectations, step out of the marketing, that step out of the, not simulation as in we live in a computer simulation like the Matrix or something like that. That's horseshit. And I've done episodes that totally disprove that theory. That is absolute nonsense. And that might even speak to the lack of adults that we may actually have, in civilization. And look, I got to be clear on this quick. Okay. Just because I'm saying, just because there's this concept that there aren't enough adults out here, doesn't mean that being a child is a bad thing. Children are beautiful, just little human beings. Okay. And they should be treated with the same respect as adults. That child-adult dichotomy, there's all kinds of issues with that. And, well, anyway, all of that ultimately ends up with the abuse of children. And that turns out to creating, adults that, or quote-unquote adults in age, at the very least, who aren't very healthy. But it's true. I think that, the technological infrastructure that we engage with today has created generations, not just millennials. I'm a millennial. Okay. But has created generations of people who don't exist in reality anymore. They just don't. They are just constantly inundated with marketing, or, messages and whatever else from people who you can't handle talking to that many people. And they just let whole swaths of the rest of their life just go to shit. Or they forget, they don't care about their privacy. They don't give a shit about their privacy. Another article, and this is very interesting. It was on Business Insider. I'm not going to say how I ended up at this article, but basically, here's the headline from the article. I'm going to read you the headline. From hiding their mansions on Google Maps to building $500,000 panic rooms, rich people are sparing no expense to keep their lives private. Now, those are two extreme examples, but the article from Business Insider goes down the list of how people who are successful in the world today are trying to get back to a world where everything isn't interconnected, where they have actual privacy, and they're actually living their lives, or trying to. It was a fascinating look. Business Insider does clickbaity articles, but I thought it was one that pointed at a very interesting, something very ironic. And I know a lot of tech commentators have talked about this, where they've said, that privacy is going to be something for the rich. I don't think it has to be something for the rich. Okay, but I do think it has to be something for people who care about education. Okay, who care about, and even again, you have people walking around with these lifestyle obsessions. The people that are successful today, there was another article actually linked with that one that was pointing out that what, the successful people are spending their money on are health clubs, fitness clubs, right? They're getting a gym membership. Okay. Which, hey, kudos to that. They're spending money on education. Okay. And they're not out there buying like the latest Gucci bag and all this other stuff because they basically want to hide from the surveillance society that we live in that could target them and know that they're who they are and that they'd be wealthy. And so people would go after them, try to hack into their phone or laptops while they're at Starbucks, because a lot of these people that are successful still do that. Okay. I know, so, you know, I've seen, well, anyway, for varying reasons of community interactions that I've had, I know that there's people like that. And they don't want you to know that they have money. They're buying cars that are like 10 years old because they don't want you to know. They want to get out of the system. This speaks to a lot of what we've been talking about here. But all of this constant distraction, that's really what's keeping us from being responsible and, I dare I say, intelligent and healthy individuals. And that's when these terms like adulting and other things start becoming, oh yeah, I did an adult thing today. I paid this bill, or, oh, I cleaned this, and like, oh, wow, you know, give them a pat on the back. Outrageous. So I don't agree with everything in this article. It's an interesting little read. I think it speaks to a much broader issue that's going on. Okay. But do we have a lack of knowledgeable, responsible people on this planet? Oh, you bet your ass. Do I know for certain that we ever had them 20, 30, 40, 50 some odd years ago? I'd say that's up to debate as well. You know, again, this idea of the American adult is really a lot of marketing, but then so much really is, isn't it? But regardless, we do have, again, a lack of people who really seem to understand how everything works. And we just have people who, I don't know, again, so many are just stuck in this high school mentality. And a lot of these platforms that we engage in on smartphones or whatever else seems to keep us right there. I think we should, this is a bigger conversation. If you have thoughts on it, I'd love for you to email me, bbs@sovereigntech.com, and let's talk about it. But we're going to hit a break, and then we've got another story to get into. Crazy shit. And then, well, we're going to talk about living in a simulation, right? Or, well, the fictional one, the Matrix. Woo! I'll be back with more. This is Sovereign Tech. Hey, if you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed, so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Again, that's blocktap.io. blocktap.io, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovereign Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
You know, it's funny. We were talking in the last episode, episode 340, about Forbes, that big Forbes flub with the NASA cryptocurrency that wasn't. Okay. But Forbes still does do good work here and there. And there was an interesting story that actually, this is from September 3rd, 2019, and apparently it might be part of a series. It highlights something that I don't think everybody really grasps here. You know, when we're talking about understanding the way that the world works, I don't think that we exactly understand that, you know, you have a lot of people who will say, and look, I've been at events, I've actually moderated panels where we talk about privacy and we discuss how, well, you know, like a person can rationally, or this is the argument that gets made to me, is that a person can rationally decide, no, I can choose to share this information with Facebook. I can choose to share this information with Google. And the inherent flaw with that argument, A, is that we don't always have the choice of whether or not we can have a Google account, right? Like if a child, for example, gets forced to go to school, it's probably a fair bet they're going to encounter a Chromebook and are going to be forced to have a Google account. So you don't have a choice often enough in engaging with these tech giants, but it's actually far more sinister and worse. And this article, that I think is incredibly important, highlights that. It highlights the point that when you think you're just giving information about you, you're actually giving information about a whole lot of people. This is a point that can't be driven home hard enough or often enough. And here's the headline from Forbes. It's by Joe Toscano. Google has my dead grandpa's data and he never used the internet. Let's read it here. Over the past couple months, I've been held up on a regular basis by the fact that Chrome has been overriding my LastPass credential window with their own, despite the fact that I've never given Chrome access to any of my sign-in credentials, which means they're just trying to be pushy and acquire those details. This has been happening to me more often than I'd like, and it has really started to bug me. Why? A couple of reasons. For one, I don't want Google as a company perpetually scanning my form fields, grabbing stuff I didn't ask them to just because that's their default status. And two, Google is prioritizing their Chrome credentials services over others I willingly choose. This is simply a small demonstration of Google's monopoly power that I would prefer not be in my life. So last week I decided it would be the last time. My first step was to hit that little manage button Google has deprioritized at the bottom of their credential window to see where it took me. What I found out is that Google, as expected, has been keeping track of me very well. Upon arrival to the controls page, I found a list of saved passwords, as well as a list of never saved passwords. Woo! Never saved? Wait, but if they're never saved, doesn't that mean they weren't saved? But then if they're in a never saved list, they were saved, right? No, Sally, and I'll keep reading here. Never saved. At no point did I tell Google to create and store a list of websites I had logged into that they didn't get access to but would like access to at some point in the future. Maybe in the terms of service/privacy policy I agreed to this, but who knows? Because Stanley Briggan, of course, who reads those? Not the majority of us, and it's just creepy. After seeing this, I decided to dive deeper into my data console to see what else Google was storing about me that I might not have thought about. My next step was the addresses panel. I thought this page would be interesting since I travel so much for work. Did it include the only address I gave Google in my Chrome settings? Was it only addresses I stayed at for X number of hours? Did it collect every place I've been? Was it collecting addresses I put into services across the web, even though I didn't tell Chrome to store that information? I was curious, especially after finding out about the not saved passwords database. What I found was a long list of addresses, many of which were directly related to me and were addresses I clearly entered into the browser at one point or another for various reasons. However, I also found several other pieces of information I did not expect and that actually were a bit creepy, even to me, someone who spends his days trying to de-creepy the web. For one, there's my mom's info. This was interesting. Maybe I entered this. Maybe it was in my contact information stored somewhere on my phone. Maybe it was scraped from an email or a purchase I made somewhere at some point. Who knows? I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to link my mom, and I tried to link my mom and I to each other based on my internet activity. So while this was interesting, I wasn't overly disturbed. I continued on. Further down the list, I found other, more unsettling revelations about what Google knows about me. It turns out Google has info connecting me to my grandma on my dad's side, who's alive and well, but has never had the internet, and my grandpa on my mom's side, who recently passed away in March 2019 and also never had the internet. This was disturbing for several reasons, the biggest of which being that neither of them had ever logged onto the internet in their lives. Neither even had the internet in their homes their entire lives. Beyond that, Google knew their exact addresses and their middle initials. I couldn't even have told you those things about my grandparents. Sure, I could drive you to their houses, but I couldn't tell you their address off the top of my head. And lastly was the format of the data entry. The all caps address on my grandpa's account really threw me off because it made me feel as if the info was machine processed at one point or another, because I don't enter information in all caps anywhere except in my handwriting on paper. That's funny, I do that too. Anyway, reading on. After seeing this, I began to investigate how Google might have, one, gained access to this info, and two, connected it to me. There are only a handful of ways I could immediately think of to explain how Google could have done this. One, the simplest and most obvious answer is that I entered my grandpa's information online for him somewhere. But I didn't. I'm near 100% certain this isn't the case. How can I be so confident? I didn't even know my grandpa's middle initial. For all I remember, growing up, I was told that he didn't have a middle name. Two, I used my grandpa's information as a secret password phrase. I doubt it. And even if I did, I would have probably only used Raislick as a statement to what's your mother's maiden name. I definitely would not have entered his entire name, and I definitely didn't give them his full address in pair if I did. At most, I might have said my grandpa lived in Blair, Nebraska or something like that. Still doubt it. 3, I entered my grandpa's information in my contacts. I didn't. I checked my records, and all I had in my phone or email contacts was his business name and phone number. This sounds weird, but if you know my family, you'd know that my grandpa worked 32 hours a day, so I had no reason to keep his phone or his home phone or his address. To this extent, I didn't even have his name as the contact title. It was labeled as Ace, like Ace Hardware, which was his store. Anyway, going on. Number 4. My parents entered his information when I was logged into their home desktop between April 2019 and June 2019 while my computer was getting fixed after serious water damage. I thought this might have been a real possibility. However, I found out that they had not. He passed away on March 1st, 2019, and they said the only time they've used his information anywhere is with the lawyers, estate managers, bankers, etc. who were helping in the process of our family dealing with his death. That means the data wasn't manually entered by me or anyone using my account, but yet the data is associated with my account. How did that happen? The only thing I can think of is that at one point in history, my grandpa gave his information to someone or some company in real life, and his information was sold to Google at one point or another. Totally reasonable, totally legal. But then that led me to another question. How did his data get associated with my Google account? Here are a few scenarios I ran through. 1. Did they use geolocation to put us together? I'd say this is highly unlikely because my grandpa carried a feature phone that would require Google to tie a supposedly unidentified account to mine using CSLI information because he didn't have any Google accounts. Possible, but I'm going to say highly unlikely. 2. My last name is Toscano and his is Razlick. Did they associate him with my mom, whose maiden name is Razlick, then associate him with me because of that association? I'm not sure. It seems unlikely and would, in my mind, probably mean they are creating some type of ancestry tree with the data they've collected on the world. Possible, but I'd like to hope that's not the case. Stallion breaking in. Whoa, what are they doing with that information? I could go into some very, very interesting conspiratorial monarchy ways of thinking with that, but I'm not going to right now. Let's read on. Other questions I have. This is from the writer. What other information does Google have about me, my family, others that I don't know about? Where did this information come from in the first place? Was it marketers? Was it someone creating an account on his behalf and potentially trying to attempt identity theft? And ultimately, how did they connect us? We've never been Facebook friends. He's never sent me an email. The guy literally never had the internet or a need for it in his entire life. Getting to the root, that's the next subheader. Needless to say, I turned the offer to save password option and turned that off and deleted any info I didn't want Google to have access to anymore. When I got, of course, Stallion breaking in, we know they probably keep it anyway, even though you can't see that they have it. When I get some extra time, my next steps are to, 1, download my data and dig through it to find out how Google connected me to my deceased grandpa, and 2, to see if Google erased the data I told them to erase, or if it just allowed me to delete it from the page I was viewing. In neither case do I have any fundamental rights to know this, but I'm going to try my best to figure it out. In the meantime, do you have any ideas as to how Google connected me to my dead grandpa? Stallion breaking in? No. I don't know how that happened, unless they collected like everything from, Equifax too. Which I wouldn't be surprised if Google was, if they didn't take advantage of these data leaks as much as anyone else. I mean, they have their own team for this, that keeps an eye on this kind of shit, shall we put it that way. Any tips on how to find, any insights on whether or not Google is creating an ancestry type database? That's one, Stallion breaking in, that's one I want to know about. Because if that's happening, there's shit I don't like about that. One thing to consider, and the one thing I want to ask this guy is, did he ever go through 23andMe? Because if he did, again, the CEO of 23andMe is married to Sergey Brin, who is the co-creator of Google. I've never liked the fact that those two are connected in that way. Okay, we've talked about that many times. Reading on. Any tips on how to find the root of this issue both for me and for others who may have experienced the same thing? Please comment below, blah, blah, email him directly. Okay. So anyway, he says, a follow-up disclaimer. This article seems to have gotten a lot more attention in the first 24 hours than I would have imagined in its entirety. I thought this would be a small issue that might spark some conversation around privacy and data rights, so let me be clear. The point of this was not to claim illegal behavior by Google. I understand scraping of web data and purchasing of data is currently legal, that many companies do it, and that more than likely this all got put together in a legal way. It was simply to provoke thought as to how things connect and why we willingly, why we willingly allow this to happen. And clearly it provoked a conversation. So I'm going to leave you with this. Why is it okay that the internet is designed to be a surveillance machine? These are great questions. Why isn't it designed to be private why isn't it designed to be private by design? Is this how we want to carry on? Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right. Oh, hit it. There's one you should be preaching from the mountaintops. What would you like to see done? How would you like to see things changed? And then he goes on to say he's going to be writing follow-up articles about this, which I'm going to be keeping an eye on this series. Because, A, it's amazing, as much as Forbes can clearly fuck up, like we talked about in the last episode of Sovryn Tech, it is beautiful to finally have people asking, people on these kinds of platforms, not on Sovryn Tech, but on Forbes, to be asking the very questions that we've been bringing up for years on this show. It's about fucking time that other people started asking these questions and started saying, hey, do we want to keep going like this? But I love that. Just because, this is so key, just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right. You really, really got to stick on that one. But this brings up the point that, you think that, I can willfully engage in, the surveillance society that we live in. But then what gives, if there are rights, okay, if there is this, like if privacy is, I call them ethics. I think rights are nonsense. But if privacy is something that you have a choice to have, okay, are you considering that the surveillance society that you are partaking in is eliminating the choice for other people? And let's go to my ANCAP listeners, or anarcho-capitalist listeners, to my libertarian listeners. You have this concept of the non-aggression principle, right? Are you aggressing against other people because you are taking part in the surveillance society? I'd be curious to get your feedback on that. I'd love to do like a full feedback episode of Sovryn Tech. Not just a Q&A like we do on Zomia 1, but a full feedback episode. Are you infringing on other people, on their quote-unquote rights, since I know that's what libertarians are into? Are you infringing on their rights, the right to privacy, among other things, by you carrying around a smartphone that can tie them to, with your geolocation data, and then, hand over data that they never wanted to and may have actively not done? I don't care. I don't mind what your answer is. Give me your answer, and we'll handle it very, very calmly. Well, as calmly as the Golden Stallion can. And we'll go over it. I'm not gonna insult anybody. I'm not gonna call you stupid. I'm not gonna do anything along those lines. I would love to have these kinds of conversations. We have to be having these kinds of conversations in society right now. We have to. Again, you think that, I can choose to hand over this information, but who else is it affecting? This is the same thing we talked about with 23andMe. We recently talked about that basically if you are handing over, you are potentially incriminating your family, all kinds of people, if you get a 23andMe test. It is not just about you. Do you really have that choice? Like, can you really choose for other people to incriminate them because you want to find out if you're 10% Neanderthal? I want to make a joke right there, but I'm not going to. I'm going to be a nice guy. Send me the emails, bbs@sovryntech.com. Hit me up on Twitter. Take your pick. I want to hear from you. I know I got a lot of philosophers in my audience. I want to hear you break this down for me. I would love it. Let's talk about it. But at the very least, now you're aware. So anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. We're going to talk about, one of the greatest franchises of all time, and one of my favorites, so we're going to have a great time with it. I'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech, The Matrix, coming up. In 2014, he ran from Miami to San Francisco, raising awareness for Bitcoin and the homeless epidemic in America, and now he's doing it again. Blockchain evangelist and advocate for homeless rights Jason King is running across North America right now, from Miami to Santa Monica, right now. 5 years later, his commitment to promoting blockchain technology and fighting the homeless epidemic in America is stronger than ever. And you can help Jason now by going to blockchainacrossamerica.com. While you're there, donate to Satoshi Forest Sanctuary Incorporated to help the homeless, along with all kinds of other ways you can help. Get involved today. blockchainacrossamerica.com. That's blockchainacrossamerica.com.
The Climax.
It is time for the Climax, where the man of tomorrow gets to talk about whatever the hell he wants to talk about. And I've been on a real tear on the idea that entertainment is dead. To say nothing of the American adult, right? Jeez. But that entertainment is dead. And it's funny because I remember about a year ago, it was announced that there was going to be, Warner Brothers was considering doing a Matrix prequel that showed Morpheus growing up, right, with Michael B. Jordan in the titular role, we don't know what the title of the movie would have been, but playing Morpheus anyway. And I said, I'm not excited about any franchise outside of maybe Fast and Furious, which I need to have a conversation about Fast and Furious and egoism at some point in the very near future here. I think that'd be a very exciting exploration. I had somebody ask me about that on Twitter. But yeah, I had said then, I was like, the only franchise that I would really get excited about right now, if they wanted to come out with a new movie, was The Matrix. And now, as we talked about in a recent episode, we do have the news that, yes, they are going forward. Lana Wachowski is there. Keanu Reeves is going to be in it. And Carrie-Anne Moss, of course, who played Trinity, is going to be in it. We are going to get a Matrix 4. In fact, right now, I think it's the project title is, the production title, I should say, is Project Ice Cream, which, okay, I like ice cream. So, but anyway, in so doing, of course, we are celebrating a 20th anniversary. The original Matrix came out, was it March 31st, 1999. We are celebrating a 20th anniversary of the film. Ellen and I, as I mentioned in the last episode of Sovereign Tech, we went and saw a special presentation of the first Matrix film in theaters, and that inspired us to go ahead. Let's watch the rest of the Matrix. Let's finish out the trilogy, and we've even been watching the Animatrix, which I think is just a brilliant, brilliant compilation of stories. So, and I did a big conversation around this a couple episodes ago of what I want out of the Matrix 4 and how solid I think it would be. But I want to spend time, my purpose in talking about the Matrix again, is that I want to implore you to watch the Matrix trilogy one more time. You watch the first movie again, it's great. Everybody loves, or most people really, really appreciate that movie. Even though I remember a few years ago, some dumbass, it wasn't Screen Rant, I don't know, it might have been BuzzFeed or something, was saying, oh, the Matrix actually isn't a very good movie or whatever. I guess that's their hot take. I don't know, because that's utter nonsense. But a place where a lot of people think that the Matrix fails is in the two following films to round out the trilogy, that being, of course, Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions. Now, most people, as far as like the Animatrix goes, I don't think even most people have watched that. And that's unfortunate because that is such a beautifully done compilation. You get almost 2 hours of extra Matrix content that is canon, and that are just, some of the artwork and the stories being told and everything are just fucking brilliant. They are so solid. But that said, and that's to say nothing of course, you have Enter the Matrix, right? Which was the game for, I guess it was for GameCube, PS2, Xbox at the time. That was kind of a side movie and explored a lot of events that were occurring in Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions, but did it off to the side and allowed you to play the characters of Niobe and Ghost, who Niobe especially would play a very key role in both of the Matrix sequels. So it was a fun way to get more of the story. And if you actually have like one of the larger Matrix trilogy sets, usually it will come with all of the cutscenes from Enter the Matrix that has Jada Pinkett Smith in it, and and everybody. It's live action stuff, full motion video. It's great, and I think it's a genuinely great video game to boot. I also like The Path of Neo, but that's not really adding anything to the story. It's more letting you experience the story as Neo. Regardless of all that, here's the thing I want to say, and this is what I want to get to, and I won't spend a ton of time on this, but I want you to check this out. Here's the thing, is that I think The Matrix 1.1 is the Matrix was trying to do, which if you listen to TIE Fighter Renegades or Sovereign Trek, you'll hear me complain, and sometimes Rob will, my co-host as well, how, like, supposedly the novels and the comic books are canon, but then they have no bearing in what happens in, say, the Star Wars movies or in the Discovery TV show in the case of Star Trek, etc. Okay? With The Matrix, they really tried to, if you played Enter the Matrix, if you watched the Animatrix, if you read the Matrix comics, okay, if you got into all of that, that there would be payoff on the screen. And I think there genuinely is. Like, there are a lot of things that go on in Reloaded and Revolutions that you have a lot more context around and that you know ahead of time. Like, say, what the Oracle says to Niobe. She references it in Revolutions, but then she doesn't tell you what it is until later in the film. So you don't need it, but then you do have, shall we say, privileged information when you are watching this film, and you know what that scene was when she encounters the Oracle. And I think that that's so cool. So they did it right. The problem is that either A, the world wasn't ready for that kind of multimedia experience, to where all these things could really interconnect. In fact, I dare say, I think Star Wars and Star Trek and other franchises might be skittish about having in extraneous material, like say a video game or whatever, to have that have bearing and meaning on a major motion picture. They might be skittish about doing that because it didn't seem to work with The Matrix. Okay. And that's a shame, because I think it did work very well with The Matrix. I think that all of the Animatrix, Enter the Matrix, the comics, and so on, all make the entire Matrix trilogy a much richer experience and something that you can understand even more. Like, even if with just the Animatrix, if you watch the part 1 and part 2, the second Renaissance in that, you feel a lot better for the machines. And like, because it seems like suddenly you're supposed to have some kind of empathy for some of the machines, or the programs anyway, when you get into Reloaded and Revolutions. You learn to do that when you watch the second Renaissance, because you find out that it was actually the humans that were assholes. Even though the Matrix wasn't really hiding that, because again, humans were the ones that scorched the sky, right? Like Morpheus says in the first movie. So you've got that, but there's more than that. You have the final flight of the Osiris, which is really, really brilliant, and actually shows you how Zion finds out that they are, that the machines are coming, right? But so that's point one, is that I think to fully appreciate all of that, and again, I think you can do it, because if you buy a complete box set of the Matrix trilogy, it will come with a lot of that material. Like, you can watch everything from Enter the Matrix, you can watch the Animatrix, and so on, and it'll all be there. Comic books, not so much, but they are enjoyable. There's a volume 1 and volume 2, I think, by Jeff Darrow that you can check out that gives you more context. Okay. Now, as far as my second point is this. Much like is happening with the Star Wars prequels, where they are going through, talk about a second renaissance, they are going through a second renaissance in that now that they're not the only Star Wars we're ever going to get ever again, people are looking at those movies without the expectations that were upon them back in 1999, of all ironies, because of course that's when The Matrix came out as well, but episode 1 would come out in May of 99. And I think that this is a very powerful thing. The first Matrix movies was so damn good. It is debatable whether or not any movie could possibly live up and build up and become bigger than that movie. As much as I love, and I have consistently fought for these films since 2003, that I think that Reloaded and Revolutions are phenomenal films. None of them could really, you could expand on the story, but you're not going to top what the first one did. I can accept that, but that doesn't mean, just because you're not a perfect movie like The Matrix is, and I think it is, that doesn't mean that your sequels can't still be fucking awesome and great. And they are. And they're fucking intense. And certainly, if anything, the action and the music and so many parts of the full production were taken to completely new heights, even if they didn't have the narrative tightness that the first movie did. So they're still genuinely great movies. And here's the thing, that if you can watch those without the expectation of, okay, these need to top the first movie, or even match it blow for blow, I think you're going to find that they are genuinely great films. If you rewatch the entire trilogy, okay, it's been 20 years. Give it that 20-year replay. All right. Rewatch them, and I think you're gonna go, oh, you know what? Fuck, that was actually pretty damn good, and you're gonna find yourself just grinning from ear to ear. In fact, there's a great video out there by there's a YouTube channel called Just Right, as in WRITE, and the video is called, I'll link to it in the show notes, but it's called on finally understanding the Matrix sequels. And the guy has this great line right in the beginning of it. He says, basically, the Matrix sequels were made for a 13-year-old that happens to have a PhD in philosophy. And I thought that was so spot on, right? Because here it is, here these movies are laying out these heavy, heavy philosophical themes, causality and everything else. But then at the same time, you have Neo like swinging around, 100 Agent Smiths and you literally hear a bowling pin sound, and like there's all this crazy kung fu action going on. And so it's a weird mix that most people probably wouldn't be into, right? Because you have to be into heavy-handed philosophy, but then at the same time, you got to love tremendous action. But here's the thing, is that I think especially a lot of my audience, I think you're of this ilk. I think you could be called, in no disrespect to 13-year-olds, you could be called the 13-year-old with the PhD in philosophy, okay? Because we love philosophy on this show. We are philosophers. Maybe not, we might not have the actual PhD, but we are philosophers very much on the show. And I think a lot of people, because I know I have a contingent, a large contingent of libertarian anarcho-capitalist listeners. You consider yourselves philosophers now. Maybe now you're not. How old was I? I guess I was like 22, 23, something like that when the Matrix sequels came out. Okay, maybe you were a teenager or something. So the philosophical aspects you didn't get, and because they weren't so tightly woven like they were in the first Matrix movie. Maybe now, as someone like yourself that actually enjoys philosophy now you can watch those movies and go, oh, fuck yeah. Because, that's what you people do, right? You go and you have these major philosophical conversations with people at events and at work, I'm sure, and wherever else you are. You live for these debates. Well, The Matrix had these debates on the big screen. And I think you can enjoy these movies for that now. There's more. And I know a lot of people are already bringing up, like, they're hoping that The Matrix 4 will save the previous two films. There's nothing to save. Those movies were great. Again, watch them again and understand that they are basically, philosophy-drenched kung fu movies. That's really what they are. And if that's not your thing, well, then that's not your thing. But that doesn't mean that the movies suck. Okay, that just means that, it's just not your flavor. There's genuinely bad movies out there, right? Like The Escape, or whatever that fucking movie is. Ellen, what's the movie's name? The Room. The Room. Okay, now that movie's shit. So, thank you. But there's bad movies out there, right? Okay, but these are not them. They just might not be your flavor. And I get it. If you were like a teenager and you saw The Matrix and you thought that was fucking amazing, okay, and the philosophy didn't hit you over the head, but then you watch these movies and now the philosophy was hitting you over the head, even though it had this amazing action, you probably didn't like it at 13. I understand. Like, I get where you're coming from, okay, and I can empathize with that. But no, I think you need to give these movies, genuinely, give them another chance, give them another shot, and I think you're going to find that there's a lot that you like. Now, what people are saying they want out of The Matrix 4, like they're already saying, well, you need to explain how, Neo and Trinity are alive if Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss are back. Understand, all of that's already been explained, and I'm getting fucking annoyed because there's a lot of supposedly nerd news outlets that clearly have not played The Matrix Online, which is an official continuation of the story, and up to at least chapter 9, which I think the game went to like chapter 10 or so, but at least up to chapter 9, the Wachowskis read and, basically gave the green light to the storylines that were done for The Matrix Online. Okay, so this is official stuff. And we know in those, like a lot of people are saying, well, and even I had kind of forgotten about this because I forgot that he came back as like a simulacrum in The Matrix. But Morpheus dies very early in The Matrix Online. He gets killed by this program called the Assassin. So, if Lawrence Fishburne isn't tied on, Well, sure, the character's dead. There's no reason to bring him back. Okay? Just like we know why Trinity and Neo are back. Neo comes back as Sarah Edmonton's, which is, what is that, an anagram or whatever of Thomas Anderson. She comes back as a woman. We know Trinity her body was saved by the machines. Okay? And she, well, you basically find out in the Matrix Online that Neo and Trinity were the product of like genetic engineering, where the machines were trying to perfectly put in human DNA into machine code. And that's how, like, say, Neo was able to control machines outside of the Matrix. It's, what did they call it? Like the biological interface program or something like that. Like that, they were the product of that. Okay, so the machines actually kind of created Neo and Trinity, and so they were both still alive. In fact, like Trinity is kind of floating around the Matrix as like this golden code. It's really beautiful. I mean, it's a great fucking story. So there's no reason not to just pick up. Hell, again, like I said last time we were talking about this, do the Animatrix 2, do a sequel to the Animatrix that tells all that story. And, be damned if people don't want to watch it. If people don't want to go full hog into these franchises, I don't care. That's on you. You know what I mean? You get out what you put into something, right? And so if you don't want to deep dive on this stuff to really appreciate everything that's going on, because these are such complex stories and beautiful philosophical stories, well, okay, then you don't want to. And that's fine if you don't want to, but then don't go around telling everybody else that, I don't understand. Well, you didn't bother to take the time to understand what was going on. So regardless, I'm really, really excited for more Matrix movies. I think the Wachowskis did a great job. I do buy in somewhat to the theory that they may have never planned on there being a grander Matrix story. They really only had one movie in mind, and then they were going to move on from that. I could believe that. But the Wachowskis laid the groundwork for a massive tale to be told with all the one's predecessors, right? With all the predecessors. And there's so much more to tell. And even if they just lifted some of the stuff from the Matrix Online, that could get really interesting. It's kind of sad that we're probably not going to get, the beautiful thing is when Neo came back as a woman and Trinity came back. I mean, that would have been awesome if they had like a lesbian relationship, or a very intriguing one where, because, Sarah Edmonton's was originally a guy, and, that could have been really cool to explore that. I don't know, maybe Sarah Edmonton's will like reformulate into Neo again at some point. There's so many stories that they could tell. This is so exciting. I'm really on board with this, and I'm talking about it again because I really think people need to very much re-explore the entire Matrix trilogy, because I think it has a stigma that basically people just stuck with. They said, oh yeah, those movies sucked, and they never bothered watching them again. I think if you get away again from the expectation that they have to be as great as the first movie, I think you're going to find a couple of just incredible fucking films. And also, if you now, as an older person, you appreciate philosophy now, there's so much to love in those movies. So do check them out again, and let's get hyped up for Matrix 4. I'm certainly ready for it. And, it's got me thinking about doing some certain things. But those are plans for another time. And speaking of another time, that's it for this episode of Sovryn Tech, baby. We'll wrap this one up. I will see all of you on the other side. Hey, sign up for the Zombie 1 Underground. You got to do it. Zombie1.com. Go there. Download the Podbean app. Make it happen. You're going to get thousands of hours of content. How could you not get a lot more of this? And you get to ask me all kinds of crazy questions. Even though, remember, I want your questions on everything we talked about in this episode. Hell, if you want to send me stuff about the Matrix, we'll cover it in a future episode of Sovryn Tech. Let's do it. That's it for this episode. Again, I will see all of you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.